Hello and welcome to episode 368 of the Stacey West Podcast. My name is Gary. I will be your host for the evening, and joining me is expert pundit, Lincoln City fan, Christopher Lamming. Sir, how are you this evening?
I'm very well, thank you. You've gone full name there. Full name. Not many people get to call me Christopher. I'm normally in trouble when I get called that.
Yeah. I'm definitely in trouble if I get called Christopher. I don't often get called Gary, particularly. How have you been? Good weekend?
Yeah, to be honest, quite a chilled one. Pretty much staying in theme with the game yesterday. I'm not going to do my normal thing of just brushing off our conversation at the start and go straight into the football, but it was certainly a theme of the weekend for me. I didn't do a huge amount Friday night. Nice chilled one. Nice chilled day yesterday. Came to the football, felt nice and relaxed with the majority of the pre-game and the 90 minutes. Early night last night, and then me and the good lady have been and done an escape room today. And a meal out, come back, prep for this. Here we are. We got out with 9 minutes to spare. Would have been about 20 minutes to spare if I could add up properly. What I ended up doing was writing down the number 2 instead of the number 12. And every single time we tried to work out what this mysterious code could be, I kept getting it wrong. And then Steph said to me, it's not 2, mate. It's 12. Like, oh. Let's try that then. And then, we've done it. Yay, we win. So we was absolutely on fire today. So that was good fun. How are you?
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, the king of the anecdote, Chris Lamming there. Sorry. It's, you know what? I had loads of good plans for today. And I didn't stay out particularly late last night. So my uncle's big Exeter fan. He came up for the game, and I'd done a run in the morning because I run like 13 miles, and it was one of the hardest ones I've done. I really struggled through it. I walked, when I say walked, like 10-second walk in between the jogs. I'm not talking about walking any major length. But yeah, it was really hard. It was really warm. I was pouring with sweat. And then we went straight into Lincoln rather than have breakfast, which was silly. That was my dad's idea. So, we went in on I'm not going to swear this early, but we were on the old double-decker bus. It was like being on the tube, all bunched in together. So, yeah. And then a little bit of a late one last night. I had a mega mixed grill at Woodcock's because I was absolutely starving. And they're not lying when they say...
Was it mega?
Oh, man. Honestly, I was eating it and I thought, I've nearly got through this. And I moved an egg and there was another slab of gammon underneath. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. So I've smashed this slab of gammon, and then I've moved some peas out of the way. 3 fecking sausages were hiding there. I'd already had one. 3 bloody sausages hiding away. They came home for the dog. In the end, honestly, I left half an egg, a little bit of steak, some chips. It was phenomenal. I've not been to Woodcock since they had a play area out the back that I was old enough to go in it back then. So,
I think I'm the same. I don't think I've been there since then. I remember going there and having a great time. There was a what do you mean, the indoor play area?
Yeah. It used to be like a soft play area at the back.
Yeah, that used to be amazing. I used to spend hours in there. That was great.
Yeah, I did as well. Just to clarify, when I was a child, I didn't used to go there.
Yeah, very important to clarify.
Very important. But obviously, all of this came on a match day. Exeter is always an interesting one for me. For a lot of people, it's a long way down the M5. But for me, when I say local derby, that sounds silly. But because my uncle's an Exeter fan, my granddad moved down there when he retired. So I've always had family down in Exeter. I remember going down there in, I think, 91, 92 or 92, 93, and they had exactly the same match winner kit. But we had the Echo sponsor and they had Carlin Black Label, which was infinitely cooler. So for me, kind of games against Exeter have always felt like they've got a little bit more riding on them than a game against Bristol Rovers or Cheltenham. I called 0-0 from the off. You may remember that in the fan zone. I said it's got 0-0 written all over it. So just underlining the fact that I am once again an expert.
I would like to remind you of something else that you said in the fan zone, which
is I tell everybody a different result.
Yes, you specifically said I'll tell everyone a different result, so that at least I'm right once, and that's the one I can quote on the podcast. So there you go. You've been rumbled. To be honest,
tell everybody 0-0.
You were it was the first. It was the first score you said. And you were the only person that I spoke to pre-game that we spoke about kind of about the match that predicted a 0-0 draw. I think there was some positive mood around the ground before the game yesterday. Most people were predicting a victory. I don't think anyone was quite as ambitious as 5-0 from last week, but most people I spoke to felt like it would be a reasonably comfortable victory by a couple of goals. Most common scoreline was like a 2-0 or a 3-1. And that was, I said 3-1. I thought there'd be goals in the game. I thought we were looking in confident mood. I think our change to a 4-2-3 run has really given the lads a new lease of life, really. And I think it suits a lot of the players that are there. It's weird, isn't it? We built a squad to play a certain shape. We've moved away from that shape, and yet this current shape feels more suited to our current players than maybe the one that the squad was built for in the first place did. Strange in itself.
I would argue to a degree that the squad that we built didn't suit the formation that we were playing, because we didn't build particularly for wing-backs. Tendai, yes, but on the left, we've always had that question mark over Rico, who's more of an attacking player, Dylan Duffy, Sean Rowan, who's more of a centre-half. We were a centre-half light if we were building a squad for 3-5-2, because we went into it with 5 centre-halves rather than 6. So, yeah, 4-2-3-1 we've fallen into. And I know we're going to discuss that a little bit further on in the podcast. I think we look more comfortable in it. I've said it before. I know it's a slight variation on one of the Michael Appleton 4-2-3-1s, but I've always liked it as a formation. I think did Danny Cowley play it for a while as well? Possibly not.
Yeah, we had when we kind of phased Reedy out the team and we didn't play with 2 up. It was more of a 4-2-3-1. Was
that like Andrade and Akindi and that kind of title winning season? And then
we can have 4-4-2 and 4-2-3-1 depending on.
We were playing a 10 at the beginning of the COVID season. Incidentally, 5 years today since we went into lockdown.
Is it really? My God.
Yep, 5 years today. And talking of lockdown, that's what Exeter came to do. They just wanted to take their point and be done with it. I think we were unchanged from the 5-0 win. And I think, as you were keen to point out, it wasn't just unchanged in terms of the actual personnel.
No, I think it was pretty much unchanged in terms of performance as well. I thought we were really good yesterday. I thought we were just as good as we were against Bristol Rovers without the goals. And I think the main factor for that was the fact that Exeter defended their box much better than Bristol Rovers did. They were genuinely good at defending their box. They didn't offer a huge amount else, but they like you said, they came for a point. It became very clear that was the case, particularly in the second half, and they got it because they fought really hard. It was a very Lincoln City away style performance from Exeter City, really, wasn't it? Let's be honest. But yeah, I think you look at 0-0, and we've had other 0-0s this season, of course, where it hasn't been particularly entertaining. We maybe haven't created much in regards to clear-cut chances. We haven't really had much territory or possession, etc., etc. But I thought we were just as good yesterday as we were against Bristol Rovers. And I'm not going to go through all the individual metrics, but I've got them side by side here, and all of the ones that we tend to use quite regularly on this podcast. And obviously XG's there, but also just things like shots, but where those shots are coming from, touches in the box, passes in the opposition half. They're very, very similar to the game against Bristol Rovers. And also Exeter's numbers were very similar to Bristol Rovers as well. So it was almost like we played 2/3 of the pitch was the same as it was last week. But in their own third, Exeter were better than Bristol Rovers were. And that was the difference, really. They got the point that they came for. I would argue we deserved to win the game. I think if we won the game 1-0 or 2-0, that would have been a very fair representation of the dominance that we showed. But overall, I think at this stage of the season, with not a lot to play for in terms of league position anymore, what you want is consistency in performances. Not the points tally over the course of a whole season is generally a representation of your performances over the course of the season. But right now, when points aren't that important, I just want to see us play well regularly and have some real patterns and purpose to our play. And I think we did everything that we did seem to have a reason behind it. It seemed to have a pattern or a purpose. I was pretty satisfied despite it being 0-0.
Yeah, I was pretty satisfied. I was even satisfied with the performance of Declan Bourne, but he did make a big shout in the first half, and it was the wrong shout. Because there's a definite handball from, I think it's Jack McMillan, from a Jeffries cross. Now, at the time, I didn't think there was an awful lot in it, but the protests from our players suggested that there was. And do you know what? Actually, we're pretty good usually as a team for protesting and challenging things that are right. You don't normally see us shout for handballs that are not handballs and things like that. Not as kind of angrily as Paudie O'Connor did, and he was showing the referee the position of McMillan's arm. It's one, looking back, it's a 100% penalty. The ball, Jeffries has tried to lift it over. McMillan's caught it with his hand. Now, there are some mitigating circumstances that have left me less angry than maybe I should be. One of those, of course, is it doesn't matter because we're not going up and we're not going down.
Yeah.
But for me, there was shadows of another massive decision in almost exactly the same area of the pitch last season. And that was the Wigan game that we lost 2-1. Because on that occasion, the lino or the assistant referee is on the right-hand side. He's unsighted. He cannot see what's going on. And he guessed. Everybody knows that because I don't shut up about it. He guessed that the ball had gone out of play. A goal was ruled out. That cost us a playoff place. I would rather they don't give a decision than guess at the decision. The referee is not in a good position to see it. The linesman's on the other side of the pitch. This strengthens my argument that actually there should be 4 assistant referees. There should be 1 for each corner, each kind of side. Do you know what I mean? And they should meet in the middle because then you'd get full coverage. But it's 100% a penalty that we don't get. We're not going to bleat on about it. But like you say, our XG was something like 1.69. You get that penalty, it puts it to 2.25. If we score a penalty at that point, they've got to come out at us. If they come out at us, there's more gaps at the back. It's a completely different game.
Agreed. Yeah. It's not a lot for me to add, really, because I agree with everything you said there, guys. But I have to say, at the time, myself and then Joe next to me had differing opinions. He was like, that's definitely a penalty. And I thought, nah. I think in real time, I thought it's a bit harsh. Like, if I'm being honest, I think that's a bit harsh. He's only about a yard away. I did say to Joe, if this was in the 90th minute and we were 1-0 down, I might have a different opinion. But early in the game, and like you say, there was the massive mitigating circumstances in that I felt quite relaxed and it didn't really matter. But then watching the replay, you go, yeah, that's like his hands right in the air. And he was a couple of yards away, and it just is a penalty. It is. But I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. I'd rather, again, it's easier when it doesn't matter to not have the pressure in it and not for this to cause us to miss out on a playoff spot. It's easy to not get angry when there's not as much riding on a decision, of course. But I'm with you in that I would rather referees be 100% sure before they give a decision, any decision on the pitch, than guess. So that's a good point. And yeah, but it would have changed the game. Everything he says is absolutely right. And I think from what we saw from Exeter for the rest of the game, I know it would change their style a little bit because they would need to come out, but ultimately I think that would suit us. That would suit us even more than the low block they were playing in. I think if we score that, we win the game 2 or 3-0, and we feel very, very comfortable like we did the week before. The hardest part was scoring that first goal, and we couldn't quite do that, but we almost did just before half time.
Yep. Yeah, we did, but that's not where I'm going to that. So I'm going to Josh McGuinness now, aren't I? We discussed this beforehand. So I do appreciate you trying. I really do. But we're still on.
I thought that was good. That's one of my rare segues. Next.
It was, yeah, and it's in the wrong place. So Declan Bourne was the referee who on Boxing Day booked Morgan Feeney for encroachment or something it was, wasn't it? And then didn't book him for a foul 15 seconds later that was a foul and therefore should have resulted in a red card. And I think he's done the same yesterday for Josh McGuinness. McGuinness picked up a booking. Now, off the top of my head, I can't remember what it was for. I think it was a challenge, wasn't it? And then he's gone and absolutely yelled at the assistant referee. He's got a booking, and it's not 2 minutes later he's gone in on O'Connor. He knows he's gone in a little late on O'Connor, because he's gone down holding his shin as if he's injured, because deep down, he knows that he could be sent off. Now, Keith, my uncle, chatting to him at half time, even he said, we're lucky to still have 11 men on the field. Again, it didn't get picked up at the time a huge amount. Around me, there was some people saying he should walk for that. I'll be honest, I have watched it back, and it would be a harsh second yellow. We've mentioned Declan Bourne. You've already, I think you said off air as well that you thought he had a good game. He's rapidly turning into one that I quite like, even though the decisions are going against us, even though he hasn't given the penalty, and even though he hasn't sent off Mal Benning and he hasn't sent off Josh McGuinness. He works really hard to keep the game of football 11 versus 11. He wasn't afraid to dish out a really early yellow card, by the way, to one of their players for a foul. It was about 10 minutes in, and it just put a stamp on it. And for me, it made it a less tempestuous game. And I think there was something you picked up on as well that he did that you quite liked.
Yeah, I particularly liked that he booked Joe Whitworth, Exeter's goalkeeper, for time wasting on about 30 minutes. Not just with the fact he did it because the keeper was time wasting, because he was, but I don't think Exeter at that point in the game were actually being too excessive with their taking their time. They weren't rushing at all, but there've been many other teams that have been taking far longer on dead balls than they were. It was mainly just goal kicks that they were really taking their time with. But normally what you see happen is referees kind of gesture to the goalkeeper or whoever to hurry up with taking the set piece. And then eventually in the 85th minute, they'll book someone for time wasting when it's pointless and we've all had a game of football ruined. He books him on half an hour, sets a precedent. Number one, the goalkeeper can't take as long now. So that automatically speeds up every single goal kick. And it's amazing how important the goal kick is now in modern football. It's for both teams. It's a massive. It's not just a lump it up the pitch situation. It's a massive reset where the kind of team in possession will try and build in a certain way, and the team out of possession see it as a really good opportunity to try and have a rehearsed press. It's a massive part of the game, and it means they have to speed it up again, which is good. But it also means that you'd like to think other players over the pitch know that they can't take too long because they're going to get a yellow card. And I just thought, finally, a referee has done what common sense should suggest should happen most weeks. And I just wanted to kind of point out, because we do plenty of times criticize referees on this podcast, and don't get me wrong, I think a lot of the time it's valid. We have historically now and then praised them, and I just thought it's worth doing that when praise is justified, because I think that did help keeping the flow of the game. Albeit we didn't get the goal that we wanted, particularly in the second half, we at least had a flow in the game, that it really wasn't too stop-start. And partly it was to do with the fact that, I'm guessing Exeter felt that they couldn't get away with slowing it down much more than they did.
What I would say about Declan Bourne, he's actually a referee who was probably developed over time, because he was the referee when we lost 2-0 at Crewe. They were given a penalty for a foul that was absolutely outside the area, that I think off the record, or not off the record, but we were later told by the PGMOL that it was not a penalty. I think he sent TJ Omer off in that game as well. He also sent off Adam Jackson against Ipswich a couple of years ago. But he's a referee, I think, that we're seeing develop through experience, and that's what happens. So yeah, fair play to him. Now, do you want to do some sort of segue from that into the great chance just before half time, or is it all
impossible? Impossible. I'll leave that to you, mate.
Well, what I would say is, first of all, 2 of our early chances came from corners, and I think obviously when you look at our set piece stats, we are very good at set pieces, but our corners, I think, have been just getting better and better over the course of the last few weeks. Pordy O'Connor headed onto the roof of the net. Tom Hamer obviously had a decent effort as well. And then it was a long throw, I think, that eventually led to Tom Bayliss' header. Was it a long throw? Play kind of broke down. Rico, who was outstanding, by the way. I can't understand how he's getting a 6.9 on the player rater, because I thought he played really well. Lovely cross. For me, it's almost the perfect header. It's not the perfect header because it doesn't go in, but Joey gets it high enough and far enough away from the goalkeeper to beat him. But Joe Whitworth is a great goalkeeper, by the way. Really liked him at their place as well. And then it comes off the bar. And if that goes in again, it's a different game altogether, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the closest we came, really, wasn't it? At any point in the game, it was, like you say, just a really good move. We are such a threat from set plays. I think Exeter have been one of the teams this season that have dealt with our threat better than most. I have to say, I would genuinely want to credit the opposition here. Not too much what they did outside of that, but they defended their box, and their organisation of our set plays was really good, because we are good at them. And it was really interesting, actually. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we had the privilege, not just us, there was 30 odd people who it was advertised by the club, but we went and had an evening with Jez on Thursday at the training ground, and saw a couple of comments in the chat. So there's obviously some people there, I think, who in our chat on the YouTube comments that was also there on Thursday night, and Jez just showed one example of the work that's put into set pieces, and it was some work that was against Northampton, actually. And what they recognised is that Northampton had a player in zonally marking one particular part of the box, which was basically the kind of front middle of the 6-yard box. That's a really dangerous area. It's obviously one of the prime areas that a lot of corners are aimed for. So you put someone there that hasn't got to mark anybody. because they're there to go and head the ball away effectively. They're a zonal player. And what we'd spotted, and this is through the AI that analyzes thousands of corners and looking at every single corner that Northampton had conceded against them. It spotted that if we put an extra player on the edge of the box, so one player goes short, don't actually take a short corner, but one player goes short, someone goes with him, you put an extra player on the edge of the box, it's that spare player in the 6-yard box that goes on the edge to mark. So we knew if we could do that, it would create the space in there, put a couple of little blocks in so someone can get a free header. And then, a couple of weeks later, we score a goal from doing exactly that. And, that goes to show, for me, it was like you hear a lot about, we know we're good at them because we've scored a lot. We hear a lot about the amount of time and effort and investment that's gone into being good at them. But it's obviously from a fan's perspective in game, all you see is a bit of chaos, really. It's very difficult to really ultra analyze what's actually happening on a set piece. You need to spend hours on just a set piece. So it was nice to see it kind of proven, but that was just really kind of confirmed to me why we're so successful at them. But what that means is to stop us, you have to be pretty damn organized, don't you? That was kind of my point, is that credit to Exeter for stopping us, but we have been getting better and better and better. I know it was Tom Bayliss that had this header just before half time, but I think part of it, particularly off corners, is the fact he's back in the team and he's a superb corner taker. His delivery is really outstanding. I would say 5 out of every 6 of his corners are absolutely on the money. So, but it didn't go in at the end of the day. So it went in half time, 0-0, but we all felt quite satisfied at the first half performance.
100%. And that's what Preston paid £2 million for when they bought Tom Bayliss a few years ago. Great player. And for me, he's been a little bit unlucky with getting injured earlier in the season, because I think had he been in the squad throughout that kind of challenging period, we might have been another 6 or 7 points better off. One player who probably didn't see as much of the ball as he would like yesterday is James Collins. And I just want to pick up on this before we move on, because it's come from Pete Summers, who says, he'd be intrigued by our views on Collins. 5 goals in 12 looks good, but how many have been worth points? Equaliser versus Crawley, but we went on to score 4. Well, you could argue the equaliser was the most important one. But there we go. Equaliser at Wigan, so there's another point. 3rd of 5 versus Bristol Rovers, but certainly involved in other goals. 5th of 5 versus Peterborough, but only came on as a sub, and a goal in the defeat against Orient, which we shouldn't have lost. He said, it struck me yesterday was the kind of game you need the player to score the goal to knock it to 1-0. I actually thought James Collins had a decent game, and I would be loath to direct any criticism whatsoever at a player who's got 5 goals in 12 games, wherever they come. Because if you score 4 against Crawley, and if you score 5 against Peterborough, and you score 3 against Mansfield, and you score 5 against Bristol Rovers, all of the players are chipping in, whether it's with goals or whether it's with their actual goal involvement.
Yeah, agreed. I think me and Pete agree quite a lot around football, but I don't agree with him here, unless he's trying to just poke us a little bit. I'm with you. I'm completely Pete. With you. Yeah, I know. Yeah, good point. But I agree with you. I think it's a great pickup, really good pickup. He's been a threat in every game he's played. He's been a real team player. His link-up play has been good. He wants the ball, which you want. You want the centre forward to want the ball. And Jez made a good point again on Thursday night in saying with James Carl, I think it might be Michael actually in one of his pressers, and he says that if you don't pass to James Collins, you better bloody score, sort of thing. But he demands that from each other. So that kind of, I suppose, aura might be a slightly strong word, but I think you get the point. It just kind of sets the standards in that final third of the pitch. And I would argue the game, the goals against Leyton Orient were valuable. We didn't get the result, but we deserved something. But we were 2-0 down in that game, and he was part of getting us back to level pegging. Like you say, the first goal that gets us back in the game against Crawley. And then we went on and played really well after that. But I think his goals have been important or had the potential to be important. But I also think his all-round play has been really helpful for not just the front line, but the whole squad. Really, I think he's given a real focal point at the top that we've maybe been missing a little bit.
Yeah. So that was half time. I don't think any of us felt really nervous about losing the game. And there was only one moment where I did feel nervous about that. And it came 46 minutes after the restart. And the second half, I think, was an example of us being in absolute complete control of a game of football from start to finish without creating too many clear-cut chances. The best one, I think we've discussed off air, was Jovan. A snapshot, drawing a fantastic save from Whitworth. That's what you get. Whitworth reminds me a little bit of Carl Rushworth. coming in from a Premier League club, not the tallest goalkeeper, but an absolutely great shot stopper. He's going to make somebody a superb goalkeeper one day when the profile of goalkeeper that you want isn't 6'5", 6'6". But for me, the profile of the goalkeeper you want is one that stops goals. That's purely and simply the profile of goalkeeper I like, and he is that. But Jovan, for me, yesterday played like a player who is feeling the confidence from getting in EA Sports 25 Team of the Week and scoring however many goals and assists he's got in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think Jovan was marshalled quite well, but when he did have the opportunity to run, he was threatening again. And then that shot, he caught it really, really sweetly, by the way. You know, he's swiveled and span and got a really good connection. And as you say, just a really good save by Joe Whitworth. That was probably the closest it felt like we was going to get to score. I did feel that with the amount of corners and set pieces we had, I think we had 10 corners yesterday. One might go in because for us, it tends to be volume, doesn't it? If you have enough, like we're good enough at them that at some point it will go in. But like I said, again, Exeter defended them really well. But yeah, that was probably the closest we came. It was a good shot. And it's nice to say something about Jovan. I don't want to kind of look too negatively, but there's been a lot of criticism historically this season around his finishing. Obviously, a hat-trick last week really helps. But it's just a really confident strike. And it's, it was, you know what? It was a centre forwards connection and shot, awareness to spin and just directs it really well with the power, the venom, the conviction that maybe we hadn't seen earlier in the season. It just goes to show that giving players a little bit of time sometimes is all they need. But unfortunately, it still didn't lead to the breakthrough.
What's really interesting as well is that corners with shots, on average, we get shots away from 40% of our corners over the last few matches. So this is yesterday it was 10 corners, 4 shots. Against Bristol Rovers, 7 corners, 3 shots. Against Birmingham, we didn't. Against Crawley, 7 and 3, so another 42%. So over the last few games, Mansfield was 8 and 4, 50%. But on average over the last calendar year, it's 23.7, which I think, again, shows that development in how we're doing with corners. And for so long, particularly under Mark Kennedy, and this isn't me trying to kind of put the boot in, but there was so much criticism of, well, we've got a corner, we might as well just pop it out for a goal kick and let them have the restart. And then I think they did. Scotty Fry started working on the corners, I think, didn't he? And we started to then get some joy from them. So, credit where it's due. Look, it's a 0-0. So we're going to we controlled the second half without really threatening. We made some changes. Some players played well, blah, 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 blah. But the real talking point now has got to be the 91st minute, hasn't it? The Exeter goal. Now, I've watched it back multiple times. And I will state, hand on heart, if it's a red and white shirt that scores that in the last minute and the referee rules it out, I am spitting feathers with it being ruled out. Because it's only the fact that he didn't give the handball in the first half that kind of gives us a little bit of traction to be able to go, well, he didn't give that decision. It's kind of evened itself out. But for me, there's maybe a hint of offside from Macmillan as it hits their lad on the arm. Potentially, I think it's Angus MacDonald it hits on the arm. But oh my lord, if that's against us, you're not happy, are you?
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Two overriding emotions really after watching it, because I didn't see a handball at the time. I thought there might be something because it just looked a little bit of a mess. Not even really a mess defensively. It was just unfortunate bounces and bits and bobs like that. So as first, initial kind of reaction was relief and also justice, because like if we'd lost that game, it'd been an absolute travesty on the balance of play. It's one of the most one-sided matches I've seen all season, and it would have been an absolute travesty and the epitome of a smash and grab from Exeter City. But it probably should have been, if we're saying that everything else is kind of pans out as it did up until that point, then maybe the referee is given us one there. Like you say, maybe there's an element of knowing he's made a little bit of an error in the first half, trying to even it up a little bit. There's a human element, even if that's subconscious. But yeah, I'm with you. Is there a hint of something there? Yeah, maybe. But would you be absolutely furious if it was the other way around? God, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We have been at times this season. It's only fair to be fair the other way around as well.
Yeah, it would have been a travesty if we'd lost the game, but it's for me, it's there is just a tiny hint of offside as the ball strikes the player, but it depends if he's not offside when the shot comes in, but he may be a gnat's knacker offside when it hits the player. For me, it's one that the linesman doesn't have to guess at because he does have a view of it, or the assistant referee. So there is a view of what's happening there. So, but when you watch the replay back and it zooms out, you can't actually see him anywhere in the shot at all. So he's already reset.
Yeah, good point. One thing that I did particularly enjoy in this moment is it took an age for some Exeter City supporters to realise that a goal had been disallowed. And that's such a beautiful feeling, isn't it? When you know the goal's been disallowed, it's a massive relief for you, and you've stopped watching the football. You just watch the opposition fans, and then one by one they realise. And there was one particular chap who I kind of just got my eye on. He was in like a cream jumper, and he went on for ages and ages and ages and ages, and then the penny dropped, and he just looked devastated. Oh, it was funny. It was really funny. I enjoyed that at the end of the game.
Not funny if it happens to you, but it is.
Oh no, of course.
Normally. Now, just quickly, this is quite fascinating. Sorry, that's Emily Rook. I'll come back on to Emily in a second. So John Booth, has a team created less XG against us this season than Exeter? It'd be good to see Chris's field tilt stat. No, it wouldn't. We don't need that in our lives.
I do know it.
Yeah. But do you know there is one team that has created less XG against us than Exeter in the league this season? And that was Charlton on December the 7th. Here's the curious stat. Our Exeter's XG yesterday was 0.34. Do you know what it was when we played them at their place?
I'm guessing 0.34.
Correct. Bristol Rovers last week was 0.35. Do you know what it was when we played them at their place?
was it 0.35?
0.35 it was. And the only team the team not in the league to have created less XG against us was Manchester City under 21s on 0.24. Now, we've got some questions and bits and bobs to go through, but you've got your hand up like a school child, so I will come back to you quickly to see what you would like to say.
I'd like to tell Jonathan what the field tilt was, please.
Go on then.
It was actually possession was quite an accurate representation of the game yesterday in that regard. So possession was 58% to us, field tilt was 60%. So it was pretty accurate representation of the game. So there you go. I didn't need to mention it as some sort of agenda this time round. It was just possession actually give a pretty good accurate representation of what happened.
I thought you might have had a graph for us, to be honest, but there we go.
I'm sorry to disappoint.
We're 32 minutes in, so what I think we'll do now is take a break. If you're on YouTube, we'll go through some comments, but if you're listening at home, we will be back in a jiffy. And that ticks over to 33 minutes nicely. First of all, sorry, I don't know. Google it. So Richard Godson says, evening, gentlemen. Are you early or am I late? Well, we're half an hour in, so I think we know the answer to that. Let's go all the way back to the top. So Andy S, evening, gents. Andy Brown, evening, gents. Gents. Clearly don't know us very well. MK Spokes, hey boys. Flossy Tops, good evening, everybody. Stevie Barton's in as well. Evening. Ed Harrison, evening. Harry Jackson, evening. Stu Warby, hi all from Harry. Flossie called it as 2-0, which it was not. John Booth says, hi, guys. John Bates was disappointed not to get the win. Probably accurate, fair assessment. Steve Jollins, who do you think will be losing at the end of the season and who will stay? We will come on to that in the second half of the show. Flossie, this is one for Chris, I think. What happened to refs adding on 10 to 12 minutes for time wasting?
Good question. I think at the end of last season, it was stated that they were going to stop doing that because they felt it didn't help in the moment. And the intention was to deal with it in the moment, but that hasn't happened at all. Hence the frustration that we've mentioned a few weeks ago. And also why it was such a nice little pleasant surprise yesterday.
Yeah, well, I like it. I prefer them not to add that on because otherwise it's just, I can't get time for a pint in the Ivy before I have to be home for dinner. John Bates, the Exeter bench told the keeper to move from one side to the other. That's why he got booked. Yeah, it was good refereeing. Steve says, thanks for the spoiler. We referenced the EPC at Jez. He's going next Thursday. So well done, Chris. Couple of comments about Collins. Andy Brown says likes what Collins does off the ball. DBRK player says Collins on fire recently. Personally, I think he'll be getting somewhere in the top goal scorers. John Bates said Collins made a mistake yesterday when he took another turn by the goal line, which ended up as a goal kick, but he could have crossed. But he is a big fan. Now this is John Booth. So a jiffy is longer than a sec, but not quite a minute. And this is, I quite liked this from Emily. She says, you enjoyed the Imps Best 11 on the last pod. I'd love to hear an alternative Imps 11, players who would never make a Best 11. There would have to be some rules, reference appearances. So we couldn't have, for instance, players that have played once or twice. It might have to be players who have played 50 times. I quite like the idea of that.
Yeah, it could be a close season. Bit of fun, couldn't it?
Let's have a look at the rota for the podcast this week. So it's you and Chris. You are Chris. You and Ben this week. So, but I want to take part in that. So we might do that as a separate show. Well, I think that's all good. So we have got some questions. Who's commented, would you take where we are now for the next 5 years, or do we have to be challenging for playoffs next year? Who's logged in as the Stacey West on YouTube?
Well, it'll probably be Charlie.
It'll be Stu.
Well, of course it will.
I bet it'll be Stu. So there we go. Right. So we have got some questions. We will come back in any minute now. Brilliant. Welcome back. Thank you to everybody who's watching on YouTube and got to listen to us just going through all of the comments, basically. So 0-0 versus Exeter. We've got 36 minutes out of that. We will get no longer, but we do have a long list of questions to get through. So we will endeavour to get through as many of those as possible. We'll take the ones that have come in while we've been on air, and then we'll go back over some of the ones that the Patreons put in the Discord channel. If that's all right with you, Mr. Lemming.
Yeah, just before we do that, would you like to know how long a jiffy is?
No, but
I'll tell you. A jiffy is a real unit of time defined as the time it takes for light to travel 1 centimetre in a vacuum, roughly 33.3564 picoseconds. There you are.
Wow. So, Stu Wells, he's in the Stacey West YouTube, and he says, would you take where we are now for the next 5 years, or do we have to be challenging for playoffs next year? Now, there's a time difference. There's a disparity there, because it would be, where would we take where we are now for the next year, or do we have to be challenging for the playoffs? Or would you take where we are for the next 5 years, or do we have to be challenging for the playoffs in the next 5 years? The two units of time don't match up, which for me makes the question a little skewed. Would I take as being a League One staple in 5 years' time? Yes. Do I think that we would need to at least 2 or 3 times in those 5 years have challenged the top 10? Potentially, but it depends on the landscape of the division. It's really easy to look at the division and go, we should be challenging for the playoffs. But when you consider the teams that are up there now, and by the way, we've got to play most of them between now and the end of the season. You've got Birmingham, who have obviously put money on it, fair play. Wickham have spent a lot of money. Then we've got your Stockport, your Huddersfield, Charlton, all put lots of money. There's so much money. Bolton, another team that we've got to play. So to say, do we have to be challenging for the playoffs when we are 19th in the budget table is a little bit like, it's over expectation, isn't it? It's like a single person signing on for Tinder and going, do I have to be dating, Victoria's Secret models in 5 years' time? You know what I mean? It's all comparable, isn't it?
Yeah, I get the point though. I get the question is the question kind of is asking, are you happy with where we are? If we have become a League One staple for the next 5 years, is that good enough? Or do we need to be progressing? I think both, really. I think if you was to say to me now, you can take where you are for the next 5 years and you could be a stable League One club, still punching above his weight, let's not forget that, then 100%, like, we still doesn't feel quite normal yet to me that we're an established League One football club. It still feels like we're having a bit of an exciting journey still. And just being at this level for this amount of time is great. But would we like to see some sort of development? Yeah, of course we would. We all want that. No one wants to be 13th every season, do they? But I think we've got to be realistic. And I think what's great is that everyone at the club wants to push for the top 6 and wants to try and get to the Championship. But it's the fun is how we get there, because we're never going to be able to get there by spending more money than everyone else. So I think it's always quite nice to play that underdog card a little bit, isn't it? And think, if and when we do, or when we try and when we get close, we've done it in a way that didn't require us just to throw loads of money at it. And that's something I just think I can get behind. And if that means that we have 5 seasons in mid-table with a flirt here and there of the playoffs, I'd be more than satisfied with that.
You see, the 2 other teams that I look at as examples of clubs that have looked to become established in this division who are a similar size to us. And this might be a little bit unfair on one of these teams, but it's Shrewsbury and Oxford.
There were the 2 in my head as well.
Yeah. So, and Shrewsbury, I think, are about to end a 9-year stay in this division. They've only challenged for the playoffs, looking at their final finishing positions, once in that time. Every other time, they've been 12th or lower. I think they've only twice finished in the top half. You take Oxford United, who ended a 8-year spell in this division last season, and they challenged for the playoffs 5 times. But, by the way, twice had a bottom half finish as well. 16th in 2017-18 and 19th in 22-23. So progression is not a straight line. And I think we found that out from Michael Appleton to the Mark Kennedy, Michael Appleton's second season. It's not always a straight line. I think you always have to take into account what the division looks like at the time. But would I be happy with us having finished, let's say, 10th to 16th in League One 5 seasons in a row? Absolutely. I'd rather that than we risk it all and end up doing an MK Dons. And I think Flossie Tops has said it just as well as we could. I'd rather have steady progress than relying on punching above our weight every season. And sometimes progress isn't finishing higher than you did the season before because everybody else moves forward at such a fast rate. I think we have progressed these last 2 seasons under Michael Scabala as a club. I think we've transitioned a little bit away from the younger squad. I think we're looking like a more rounded football club. But obviously, it's been a little bit difficult at stages this season.
Yeah, agreed. I think we've progressed from last season. We had a magical second half, but is the club in a better spot than it was this time last year? Do we own most of our assets? Like in terms of the long term, is everything looking positive? I honestly think it is. League position, we've been disappointing this season compared to last, but like you say, the landscape changed so much. 58% wages went up in League One this year on average. 58%. Normally you see 5 to 10% rise. 58% the average increase. And that was without Birmingham. That doesn't even include Birmingham. It's mad. So you have to just be realistic. Now, I don't think it's realistic to expect that every year. We'll probably go back to our regular 5 to 10% next year. It's probably a little bit of a perfect storm. The club maybe we've been a little bit on the pitch, a little bit guilty. I think just we don't want to give too much away from Thursday night. He mentioned this in the press as well, an admission that maybe we were trying to recreate what we did at the end of last season rather than trying to build something and keep progressing. Almost trying to complete the same puzzle, but with different puzzle pieces, really. And it's never going to look the same. It's never going to fit quite right. And I think what we're probably seeing in the last few games, particularly since we've changed to this 4-2-3-1, is actually probably what Michael Scubala wanted to do ever since he joined. But joining mid-season last season, didn't want to make, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Keep the stuff that's good and add to it. And then the second half of the season happened and we flew. And you think, well, let's try and do that again then. It makes sense why they did it. But yeah. I think we're pretty well set up to progress now in a slightly different way. And I honestly think we'll start to see a little bit more of this aggressive attacking football in inverted commas that maybe was mentioned way back when. But there's so much going on. I feel like I've gone off on a tangent there, but I think it was relevant. I'll be quiet now.
I absolutely doubt it was relevant, which is the beauty of it. I've just been logged out of Y-Scout for some reason. I have no idea why.
Not guilty.
And Pico asks, "Evening, gents. What's your thoughts on seeing Clucas from the bench rather than from the start with his experience and that level he's played at? Surely he makes us stronger." I'm going to kind of sit on the fence a little bit with this. Personally, I'd love to see Sam Clucas start alongside Tom Bayliss. Don't see him on the training ground, but I thought Conor McGrandles had a good game yesterday. I think it would be 2 or 3 weeks ago, it wouldn't have been as harsh to have dropped Conor McGrandles after a couple of challenging weeks, I think. I'd like to see Sam Clucas start, but at the same time, we're not on a terrible run. I mean, if we lost to Birmingham, but if you take that away, we've only conceded once in open play since the first 6 minutes of the Crawley game, which is 360 minutes plus of football. So we're doing something right. And in that period, we've scored 9 goals. And when you think one of those games was against Birmingham City, again, who are like a championship side, and when you think, I don't like going on about XG, but you look at our XG, and technically we should have won yesterday as well. Something's going right. So I would be loath to start criticizing when things are going right. It's easy to kind of have opinions when things are not going so well. When we're losing 1-0 at home to Burton, you can go, well, yeah, we should perhaps have started this or started that player. But yeah, I'm not something I'm going to look at and go, well, he should be starting when we're on a run that has essentially seen us to safety.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think he was ever brought in to be a guaranteed starter. I think the romance of it made us all want to see him. And I'm not saying he doesn't have something to add to the squad. Of course he does. But I'm with you at the moment in that, particularly when, let's be honest, as much as we all felt like we were safe, we were not mathematically safe. We're probably there now. So, and Michael interestingly said in his post-match interview yesterday that maybe we will start to see some slightly different combinations of players now for the end of the season. With one eye on next season. And of course, Sam Clucas is one of those players who we know there's a lot out of contract at the end of the year. We know there are some that have got options. We know that we signed Sam on a short deal with an extra option of an extra year for next season. It wouldn't surprise me to see him starting in the next few weeks, if nothing else, to give Michael a proper look at him from a start to see whether he's deserving or kind of, has the desire of a contract for next season as well. So I don't think performances would dictate that Sam maybe deserves to start ahead of someone else, not because he's performed poorly, but because we've been all right recently. But I actually do expect to see him get a handful of starts between, maybe not a handful, maybe 3 or 4 starts between now and the end of the season.
Now, Steve Jollins asked a question which we kind of half picked up on in the break, but just to give you a heads up, Chris, we'll use Pordy O'Connor at the end to segue into one of the other questions. I'm just giving you that now so you're aware. Okay. Excellent.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
So Steve said, evening chaps, who do you think will be losing at the end of the season and who will stay? Now, that's kind of played into what you've just commented on as well. You know, I think Sam Clucas will stay with the football club. He came in on, I think, a short-term deal, didn't he? But I think he'll stay. Obviously, there's players like Ben House, Rico Hackett out of contract, but we don't know officially whether there's options there or not. I would imagine the club are very, very well protected in terms of players leaving. My big fear is around Pordy that we'll come on to. I think Tyler Walker will almost certainly go. And I think we could lose Ethan Arahan for a sale. The one thing that may work in our favour with Ethan Arahan is this injury, because it may put people off matching his valuation in the summer, but we shall see. Sean Rowan, again, we're protected. If Sean Rowan leaves, we will get a chunky development fee, I think it is, isn't it? Or a development compensation fee tribunal thing. So I don't imagine, and I wasn't at the Jez presentation, I don't know if it's been mentioned or not, I don't imagine there's an awful lot of fear about us losing much of our squad unwillingly.
Yeah, he didn't really talk about that in too much depth directly, but it did show the protection that we had on certain players, but that was very much asked to keep within the room. So I will of course respect that. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't feel like there's going to be a massive rebuild. I feel like the players that we do have options on, that they're probably the players that they're playing for those options really now. I think it's interesting that Ben House hasn't started much recently, because he was someone who I thought was a guaranteed starter earlier in the season, and he is one that's out of contract. And I think we've got an option on him because I seem to remember it being mentioned when he signed his contract extension. But I'm not 100% sure on that one. But I think that's interesting. And I'm not saying I don't want Ben House in the side. I like Ben House. I'm a massive Ben House fan. If anything, when you've got a centre forward like James Collins, who hasn't necessarily got the running power that maybe others have, he has obviously adds so much more. Then sometimes you need your number 10 to go and almost play like that second striker and get beyond. I think Ben House would be quite suited to that, as well as leading the press. So I'd be interested to see Ben House be extended, but I do think it's interesting that he's maybe not played as much recently. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, injuries, knocks, etc. But he's probably the big one for me that really intrigues me as to whether we'll trigger that or not. Rico has had a great kind of recent part of the season. I would like us to keep him as part of the squad, but I do feel like if he has other options elsewhere, or the club decides not to, that we'll be quite confident in replacing that. Jack, if we're going to play a number 10, Jack Morland is really well suited to that role as well. So yeah, the big one's Pordy, isn't it? And I know you want to segue into that, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Pordy, but I honestly, deep down, do I expect Pordy to leave the club? Yeah, I do. I think the club will absolutely try everything they can to keep hold of him, but they won't break the wage structure, because it jeopardises everything that we were doing for the rest of the squad, doesn't it? But he deserves whatever wages he gets offered elsewhere, and he will leave with my best wishes. What I will say is the only concern I had about squad building for next season was the back line, because, like you said, Sean Rowan, yeah, if he leaves, we get well compensated, but he's been a fixture of our team. Pordy, massive presence at the back, leader, epitomises leadership really on a football pitch, doesn't he? That's two key players in our back three, and then we've got Tom Hamer, who's come in recently. Lewis Monson, we still don't really know exactly whether he's going to be capable of playing every week. I think hopefully the idea is next season he'll be treated as everyone else, but we still don't know. Jacko out of contract as well, but I actually feel a bit more comfortable with this now, particularly after seeing Tom Hamer come in and do so well. If we are going to be playing a back four next season, which it seems like that's going to be the case, considering that seems to be what we've been moving to recently, and it's been quite successful, and I'd argue it fits the players we've got already more than the old system did. But if you're only going to play 2 centre-backs rather than 3, well, you haven't got to recruit as many defenders. We haven't got to rebuild the defence as much as maybe as it felt like we did with this kind of committing to a back 3 system. So Pordy's the big one, obviously, but aside from that, I think we'll be okay, whatever happens.
Yeah, it may not happen, but I actually think the differential in our squad next year could be in a couple of loan players. We haven't relied on loan players at all, really, this season. Bailey Cadamartri, whilst he scored some goals for us, was never the player that we relied on. He kind of broke into the side, dropped out of it. We were using our own players. Joe Gardner, he's exciting, but again, he's kind of a trump card rather than a key figure. And I do just wonder if that might be where we look at the big wins. Particularly when you think about some of the young players that we've got. I mean, we do have some exciting players. And if we're talking about playing a 4-2-3-1, you've got to have, like you say, Jack Moylan in the 10 role is exciting. Rico Hackett in the 10 or on the left is exciting. Jovan Makama can be exciting. Tom Bayliss is a really creative footballer. There's elements of the Ted Bishop in there. Ethan Hamilton's not had a great season, but he is creative. He can play in those kind of advanced roles as well. So it may be my focus is more on who comes in, not who goes. And I think if the new season kicked off tomorrow and we had the exact squad that we've got now, I would be confident that we would finish higher than the position we are in now in next year's League One, if that makes sense. So you take Wrexham, Birmingham go out of it. You look at the teams that are coming up. Even the teams that are coming up, there seems to be a desperation to not be promoted out of League Two. Walsall have crumbled. Bradford have started losing games. Colchester get in there and drop away. A half decent Grimsby side are in there. Notts County are falling away. The teams that come up, I don't think are actually going to be, I'll say the same quality. I mean, Cambridge, Shrewsbury and Crawley have all been pretty poor, but they've all beaten us. Cambridge haven't beaten us, but they've taken points off us. Yeah, so I think that's quite interesting. Of course, this segues in to a question from Jay about Pordy O'Connor, because if Pordy O'Connor does leave, he says, who are you taking to try and replace him? So he thinks Hamer has the potential to replace him in the more medium term, but they're playing side by side at the moment, so that isn't an option. So you and I both did a really rudimentary bit of research 10 minutes before we came on air, and we both come up with 2 names for players who we think could replace Pordy O'Connor. Shall we do one apiece and with a real brief explanation of why? I will let you start because you looked in a different market to me.
I did. Yeah, I tried. Yeah, like I said, this was very rudimentary, and it would be I would like to do this properly, to be honest, and maybe this again might be a close season thing once we know exactly who's leaving, if they're leaving. First one, Sam Stubbs, currently at Cheltenham on loan from Exeter City. Centre back has been pretty dominant. I'll be honest with you guys. All I've really looked at for this is players with good aerial win rates that are out of contract in the summer. In League Two, and there was two that came up. Jasper Moon, Sam Stubbs.
He's on loan from Bradford.
Sorry, he used to play for Exeter. Went to Bradford.
He did used to play for Exeter. That's correct.
I knew what I meant. Ultimately, he's on loan, but he is out of contract at the end of the season, and has been good in a average Cheltenham side. But let's not forget when we signed Pordy O'Connor. I was basically trying to think, how did we sign Pordy O'Connor? Can we get someone that coming in a similar sort of mold? So 23, 24, 25, 26, sort of that sort of mid-20s age. A team that was fine in League Two, but wasn't pulling up any trees, but was a good performer in that sort of team. And yeah, so Sam Stubbs kind of jumped out of me as one of those, as did Jasper Moon. But I decided to go for Sam Stubbs because he's also played in League One before.
So my first pick was a little bit different. I looked at players that were going to be dropping out of this division who may be available, and actually came up with out of contract players as well. So the first one I've come up with is Morgan Feeney. So he plays as a defender for Shrewsbury, 6'3", ranks really good for aerial challenges in League One. So kind of proven at this level. Yes, he's 26, but again, I think when you're looking at replacing Pordy, you're probably not looking at a player that you're going to have to try and sell. You're looking at a player that's going to try and do a job for us. Came through the Everton Academy, a couple of seasons at Carlisle, a couple of seasons at Shrewsbury, likely to be out of contract in 2025. I just think that he's even actually played in the Europa League, apparently. Was that probably for Everton? Yeah, I think he's a player that potentially could come in and do the Pordy O'Connor job.
Yeah, I like that. I like that shout more than mine. To be honest, like both of your shouts, I like both of mine. To be honest, my other one was one that would require a fee. Oliver Casey at Blackpool. This would be quite a substantial purchase, but someone else that plays in a similar style team to us. Blackpool have a lot of metrics that are quite similar to us. He's very dominant, playing in the either the centre of a three or on the right side of a back four, as in the right of the two centre halves. Again, good aerial duels in a team that doesn't concede a huge amount of goals, particularly from set pieces, but would cost some money. Exactly how much would be difficult. I think he's got 1 year left in his deal, but yeah. And then again, there's maybe the foreign market, because I know that's a place that we're probably trying to find some value. You can sign players in the foreign market theoretically of a better quality for a lower cost. But do you want to risk that for a particularly like your main centre back that's just going to dominate and go and be your first contact on most things? I'm not sure. I don't know if that's a bit of a risk, potentially bringing someone from a foreign market into English football for that. What's your other one?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is a little bit of a risk bringing a player in for that. My other one is a player that we have faced on a couple of occasions, and it's Ryan Sweeney at Burton. So another player that's likely to drop out of this division. But Ryan Sweeney, when I say impressed me, he stood out, not least because he's 6'4". So you are talking about somebody that can be aerially dominant. He's had a couple of loan spells with Bristol Rovers, loan spell with Mansfield. He then signed for Mansfield for 2 seasons, went up to Dundee. While he was at Dundee, he was named in the Scottish Championship Team of the Year and the SPFL's Championship Team of the Season, which apparently one's the PFA, one's the SPFL. So he was outstanding for them this season, or over the last 2 seasons. He's played 74 times for Burton Albion at this level. So again, he knows the level. Yes, he's 27. So again, you are looking at a player who is a little bit older, but there's that bit of experience. And we'll also know Tom Hamer, by the way, will have played with Tom Hamer last season at Burton. So there could be a potential there for a partnership out of contract at the end of this season. I think that Ryan Sweeney would be a very good replacement for Pordy O'Connor.
I agree. I think, like I said earlier, I like both of your shouts more than I like mine. What I would say is, and this might be a little bit of bias, but no one that we've mentioned there replaces Pordy O'Connor. No, would they be able to add to the squad? Would they be able to be, do a good job? Could they grow into the sort of player that we hope they could be? Yeah, I think there's reasonable belief that that's the case. But honestly, I think Pordio has been an absolute man mountain. The best case scenario is he signs a new deal. I really don't think it's very likely, but I want that more than just by anyone else that we could possibly be linked with. I don't think there's anyone that would be realistic for us to sign that would be better than Pordio O'Connor for the price that we're paying Pordio at the moment. So that would be the hope. But yeah, like gut instinct is that we will need to replace him. And I imagine the club are doing quite a lot of work behind the scenes to try and identify targets that will be realistic.
100%. We're looking at just under an hour. So I'm going to take the last question from Emma Krellin. She says, seeing that we seem more likely to be heading towards a 4-2-3-1 next season, which I think we are, how does this affect the signed up squad and any potential rebuild? In other words, what do we have? What do we need? And I think it's a really good question. For me, and this is where I was talking about the loan market, if you're playing a 4-2-3-1, those two high wide players are not usually players that are going to finish 90 minutes. I think that's fair to say. And I think we've seen with the impact that Joe Gardner had when he came on, particularly against Crawley, I think it was, we probably need to strengthen those wide areas with a little bit more pace and direct running. So it's great that we've got Rico. It's great that we've got Jovan. Ethan Hamilton can play there. But as soon as you start saying words like can play there, you're straying into that square pegs or rectangular pegs in square holes. Do you know what I mean? You're having to shuffle things around a little bit. So we'd probably need to add Eric Ring would be a player that could play there and probably would suit those wide areas very well. But I think you would have to look at adding at least one more player that's got a bit of pace, a wide player, could be a lone player. I think in terms of the rest of the squad, it depends on who goes. Tendai Darikwa is perfectly adequate as a right back. Adequate is an understatement. You would probably then be able to play Tom Hamer there if need be as well. Centre back we've already kind of covered. Sean Rowan goes, yes, we'd need a dedicated left back. You could say Dom Jeffries could play left back. He's actually done really well playing on the left flank, by the way, over the last few weeks, considering he's technically a central midfielder. I think our squad is more suited right now to 4-2-3-1 than it is to 3-5-2. So I think, again, it would literally just be about those final little tweaks to a squad that's already looking fairly good. The two midfielders, okay, Tom Bayliss is playing holding at the minute. I'd prefer to see him playing a little bit more advanced. Conor McGrandles would be there. Ethan Arahan would be there. There may be scope to bring somebody else in, potentially. But again, you've got to balance that with wage as well, haven't you, with budget? So and even up top, if we did keep Ben House, you've got Ben House, James Collins or Freddie Draper who can play there. And if we don't keep Ben House, you'd imagine we'd bring another striker in, and we probably wouldn't have any more than 3 out and out strikers, because if we wanted to change formation to go back to a 2 up top, Jovan can then play centrally as well. So that would be kind of how I looked at the summer recruitment were it to be a 4-2-3-1 next season. Totally
agree. I think it's strange, isn't it? Because I've defended us playing 3-5-2 a lot this season, and when you can play your wing backs high, I like a back 3 system, but only when you're able to get your wing backs high, because you're defending with a 3 rather than the 4. In my mind, you get an extra player, but when you're forced to defend deeper, you miss an extra player further up the pitch, don't you? It's not rocket science. That's what happens. And I do think, because in my mind, our wing backs in an ideal world are wingers. We've actually recruited wingers to play wing back rather than fullbacks to play wing back more often than not. I know Tendai maybe doesn't fit that mold, but everyone else that's played in those roles in the squad this season has been more suited as a winger type player. Obviously, Dom Jeffries is just kind of a jack of all trades, isn't he? But yeah, I agree in that I think we're actually already very suited to the 4-2-3-1. And I also agree that it's that wide forward position that's probably the most prominent that we want to add at least one more in. I think I really like Jovan on the right, but he's a sort of player that you want to be crashing the box. You want him to be kind of more like an inside forward. So you probably want someone who can be a little bit more, basically a Joe Garner type player on his side, when you want to give that fullback on that side a different task. And then you probably can't have 2 of those wide players who are really driving into the box all the time, because then you miss out you build up and you miss out that player in midfield to help you play through the lines. So maybe we need like a Jovan type player on the left as well. So you can have then 2 different types of threats on each side. That would be my way of looking at this. And me and Ben mentioned this when we looked at like squad building for next season. How would you punch above your weight? And my opinion was adaptability, taking a lot from Stockport and how they built their squad. They've got lots of players that can play multiple roles, and are very comfortable at doing that. So rather than maybe as we have now, we've got or try to recruit 2 players for each position that are almost like for like, with the idea that, well, if so-and-so is injured and can't play or is suspended, you put someone else in and you don't notice that they're missing. I think that's kind of the idea that the squad was built in. But I think what would be sensible now is you have 2 types of players for each position on the pitch, and that allows you to offer variety on each side. So I think that wide forward position is very important. I think Rob Street could do a job out there, particularly on the right-hand side. Yeah. Or he could, of course, be that
JJ McKinnon.
That in-behind runner. JJ had been most successful in his career when he's played in the 10 role rather than the 8 role. So we've got JJ in the 10. We've got Jack Morgan in the 10. You've got Rico, who, let's be honest, could be the kind of jinky kind of cutting in on the right side. If we want that more kind of cutting in, kind of more, I suppose, dainty player, if you like. Probably a terrible word, but you get the idea. On the right, maybe. And then when you've got Jovan doing what he does, and then you need 1 or 2 on the left-hand side to have some options there. But I honestly think Eric Ring could be one of those. I thought in his little cameo yesterday looked really promising and really threatening against a team that was sitting in very, very deep. There wasn't a lot of space. I don't think we need a lot. I really don't. And that is nice, but also surprising, really, in a way. And also, Zena Coro, just seeing that in the chat. Of course, Zena Coro has been in and around the first team all season. And he's back from Bournemouth now, it appears. And he looks like he's going to be in and around the squad. So, yeah, he's another player who could be one of those exciting wide players. And I think what's one last thing to add on this is you can afford to take risks with those players when you're playing a back 4. Because even though in like your settled attacking phase, you've got more players forward, both of those wide players have when you're defending is protection behind them, which they don't have as much of in a back 3, and they've got to play wing back. And sometimes we've seen like Eric and Rico get exposed a little bit when that's been the case. Like they can have that confidence to try things that maybe they wouldn't if they're playing wing back because of the protection that's behind them. So yeah, I'm all on board for it, to be honest.
I also think that the 4-2-3-1 or a shift to 4-2-3-1, and we may have picked up on it or alluded to it earlier in the show, I think it shows a real shift in mentality for us from this season, because I think when you play 3 at the back, and I know we may disagree slightly on what kind of a 3 at the back, what the purpose of that is. But for me, the teams that played 3 at back against us, particularly Shrewsbury over a few years ago, they were always the teams that were difficult to break down. They were always the teams that wanted to come, be compact and snatch a goal. And that's what I think we've tried to do over the last several seasons. I mean, I think we first played 3-5-2, if memory serves me correctly, when we beat Sheffield Wednesday, and Morgan Whittaker played as a left or right wing back in that game. And I've seen us kind of be compact, try and kind of keep these bigger teams, keep them restricted, take our chances when they come. For me, going to a 4-2-3-1 shows a shift in mentality in that right now we are not one of the teams that is looking to always keep it compact. We need to find a way to beat the teams that, and I hate this saying, but I'll use it anyway, we should be beating. So the 4-2-3-1 is a method of finding a way to beat Shrewsbury, Cambridge, Crawley, or Notts County, Crewe, Port Vale, Walsall when they come up. And I think that could be really exciting for next season. And isn't it nice that we're here talking about this now, but not 3 weeks ago, people were talking about sleepwalking into relegation, Michael Scabala being sacked, gone as far as we can. And it's just that slight shift in tactics. I think we're on for a decent run between now and the end of the season, because I think that we've got some top teams to play who have got to get results, Charlton, Huddersfield, Bolton, and they're going to want to attack us. And if we're in a 4-2-3-1, I think it could get really entertaining. And games like Orient and Barnsley, yes, we came out on the wrong side of those results. But I think those kind of open games with goals at both ends, hopefully not us gifting them, could become something that we see over the next, I think it's 7 or 8 matches we've got left now. But it's just a shame, isn't it, that it's with nothing really to play for.
Yeah, but it's also quite nice because it's almost like we get an extended run of pre-season. We're almost getting a glimpse into next season now, because like you mentioned a few minutes ago, in that it was only a few weeks ago that there was a lot of concern, and that Crawley game felt huge, didn't it? And I think it is interesting that our turn in form has coincided with a shape change, or at least a little bit has coincided with a shape change. I think it's almost just a commitment to stick to what we wanted to do right from the beginning, really. But it was just that what we were doing before was working so well, but then it wasn't. So it's kind of hand forced. But yeah, it is exciting. And like you say, that's one thing that we absolutely do need to get better at, is beating those teams that tend to be lower down, that you, in inverted commas, would expect us to beat. But there's also something quite, particularly later in the season, that's very apparent about those sort of teams, and that is that they tend to play in low blocks, particularly when they come and play at Sincil Bank. They do tend to keep men behind the ball. They probably will have a back three or more of a back five against us. So how would you break that down? That's what we have to get better at. We're great. We knew we was going to beat. All of us knew we were going to beat Peterborough. We and I were on the pod after that, and we both said we knew before the game we were going to win that game because it just suited us. We know that what they're going to do, and it suits our strengths. But what doesn't suit our strengths is when we play Burton, when we play Shrewsbury, etc. So how do you break them down? How do you break them down? Well, sometimes it's just a numbers game, isn't it? Like if you have one extra player further up the pitch compared to what we have been for the majority of this season, well, that's someone else on their defensive shape that's going to have to deal with them, isn't it? At the end of the day, there's more space to play, and there's more players moving around. There is therefore more opportunities to make a mistake. And yeah, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? But sometimes it's a numbers game. If you've got 6 people attacking rather than 5, it adds up.
It does. The reason that I'm mouthing and sighing now is I've just realised that we've gone on to 1 hour and 7 minutes already. I've just had a message. Yeah, I was just thinking I could literally sit here talking about it all night. We could do like a 2-3 hour podcast. Whether people would actually want to watch that or not, I don't know. 40 people are watching at the moment on YouTube. So thank you very much for that. That was episode 368 of the Stacey West Podcast. It seems a long while ago now since we were talking about the 0-0 draw with Exeter, but it was only 40 minutes. But since then, we've looked at 4-2-3-1. We've looked at the future being bright and rosy. The future's not all that bright and rosy for Gary Caldwell. He can probably expect a letter from the FA demanding some money as part of a fine. And he's not the first Exeter City player or a staff member to lose it against Lincoln. There's been a hat-trick of red cards for Exeter City players and staff, but sadly, no hat-tricks, no goals, and once again, dour results. One thing that's not dour is Chris Lamming. He'll be back on Thursday, along with somebody who probably is also not dour, Ben. In fact, somebody said to me the other day that they really liked Ben's presentation style in the Imp and Angel. I thought I was drunk and misheard it, but no, that is exactly what they said. And I shall be back with you next Sunday alongside Charlie Beeston. My apologies if I look a little bit hungover. I'm going to try not to drink, but I am going to see Goldie Looking Chain at the Drill Hall. In the meantime, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for watching. We will be back with you. But in the meantime, up the Imps.
Up the Imps.